Hey, it's Sammy Ray. Welcome back to Brave Bird Astrology. Today we're going to talk about the astrological houses. And you're probably like, Sam, why do you keep talking about these houses? What is the house? So there are 12 houses. And you can find your 12 houses by calculating on your natal chart or whatever chart you're running. Each chart, even if you're doing a relationship chart, will, like, even if you're doing composite, which is a combination calculation of two people, you're going to need an ascendant because it sets up your 12 houses, right? And so on the natal wheel, you will see, or whichever chart wheel, you will see that there are 12 houses, right? And you have part of the zodiac that's very me-oriented, self-oriented, right? And then you have the other part that is for the collective or us, like multiple people, okay? So I'm just going to go through each house and explain what they represent, and depending on what planets fall into those houses can dictate how that might resonate in your life. The houses, I call it the flavor, right? That's the spices, right? Not only are they the representations of different parts of your life, but they're the spices of the planets that fall into that house. All right, let's get cooking then. All right, the first house is the house of self, okay? It's an Aries house. Basically, it's the house of personality. Your ascendant sign will sit here. It's your personality, okay? And it's how you come off to your friends and family, how they see you. And it's also, like, you can also see features from here. Like, there's certain descriptions of, when we go through the different ascendant signs, I'll explain what the different features are. But there are different features for different ascendant signs, like physical features. So that's first house. Second house is the house of wealth, values, possessions, and money. So it's a Taurus house. Basically, this house, you can see how you're going to handle money. Some people, will have planets here and they can make money grow, okay? They say that anything that the second house touches, if your second house is positive, you're going to be making some money, okay? Taurus house. Third house is a house of communication, short distance travel, neighbors, siblings, trades, and I'm missing something. Well, that's what we got so far. There's so many different descriptions to these, but it's a house of communication mainly. So if you look at it, wherever your planets are sitting, whenever you have planets sitting in that third house, that is going to resonate in third house ways, okay? Fourth house. Fourth house is the house of family, your early life, and it's also the IC of the chart. It's a very soul connecting part of the chart. It's the house of your mother, okay? So we can actually see from this point in the chart, okay, what your mother may have been like, okay? So we look at moon, and we look at the fourth house, to see who. And it could be flip-flopped, it could be that it's basically the nurturing parent you can see from the fourth house. It's very ironic because in my chart, my fourth house is Scorpio and my mother is a Scorpio. Sometimes it works out that way, but you can see what your mother would be like from that, and how you would interact with your family depending on what planets fall into that part. Also the home, you may, if you have planets in the house, you may very much like to have a nice, stable home. Or, I mean, or maybe not. Let's say you have Uranus in your fourth house. You might like unpredictability in your home. You might like, I don't know, a blue wall here, a purple wall there. So you just have to look at everything. But that's fourth house. So fifth house is the house of children, romance, and flings. Also creativity and drama. Okay. So you see dramatic arts from here. It's the Leo house. Okay. My fifth house is booming. I have a stellium there, and we'll talk about stelliums later. But yeah, very much in the dramatic arts. It's a theme in my life. But fifth house, you can see from the fifth house what your children might be like if you decide to have children. You can also see in your charts, depending on how things are aspected to the fifth house, if you will even have children, or, depending on what's there, you may be a step parent. You can see that from the chart. I may end up being a step parent. I have Saturn and Capricorn in my fifth house. Saturn does all kinds of other things to my fifth house too. Fifth house is house of fun as well, right? That's your fun. You see sports from that house. I have Saturn and Capricorn sitting there, so it puts a damper on my fun a little bit. Like sometimes I have to remember how to have fun. Okay, but that's fifth house. Sixth house is the house of your daily routines. Okay, it's daily routines, health. You can see your pets from this house. It's also the house of hidden enemies, and just day-to-day life. Okay. Did I say health too, if I didn't say that? So yeah, when you have planets that sit in the sixth house, you have to be a little careful, because you have some houses that are benefic and some that are malefic. The sixth house is a malefic house. So if you have a planet that is negatively aspected, meaning you have squares or oppositions in this house, you might not always be in the best health, or you have to constantly watch your health. Let's say you have Jupiter there. Jupiter gives a blessing wherever it is. So let's say you get sick, but you get better quicker, or something like that. So there's things that can combat the sixth house, and it's not necessarily a terrible house, but it's the Virgo house, and it's a malefic house. So seventh house is the house of partnerships. It's a Libra house. Libra gang, stand up. Okay. It's the house of partnerships, law, not necessarily, it's more like you can see justice from this house. Actually, all my people who do tarot, a lot of times Libra is the justice card, right? So you can see law from here. You can see marriage contracts, contracts of any kind, and also the house of open enemies. So whenever you have planets that sit in your seventh house, relationships might be a theme in your life. And depending on what planet is sitting there, and what sign is sitting there, that can affect how you approach your relationships. Okay. For example, let's say you have Uranus there. Actually, even though Uranus is not sitting in my seventh house, I have Aquarius in my seventh house. So that's the seventh house, my seventh house ruler. So you want to look at and see, okay, what's the sign? This would be the ruler. Okay. Depending on whatever the sign is, their ruler would be the ruler of that house. Okay. So I have Aquarius in my seventh house. Since that's a house of partnerships, I want to go wherever. I have to go back and look and see where Uranus is sitting in my chart and how it's aspected. Okay. So I may have unconventional relationships with Uranus being my 7th house ruler. And since it's sitting in my 5th house, I could, it may start out as flings, and then also I might have a very Uranus type child. Okay, Uranus is unexpected things, and just think Aquarians, eclectic, just different, forward moving type people, right? That's in my 7th house. So I attract a lot of Aquarians. I don't mean to. I'm just kidding. I love you guys. But yes, so wherever planets are sitting in your 7th house, you have to pay attention to that, because that's going to rule your relationships. Okay, 8th house. This is a Scorpionic house. So within the 8th house, it's the house of transformation, death and rebirth, other people's money, and also, I'm missing something. Well, let's go with what we got. Okay, so from the 8th house, inheritance. You can see inheritance from the 8th house, because it's other people's money, or depending on what planets fall there. Again, it's a water house. Water houses are karmatic. So think death and rebirth. If your 8th house is empty, it doesn't necessarily mean that it won't affect you in some kind of way. But let's say you have something, let's say you have an asteroid here, and it is opposite something. Let's say it's opposite another planet in your 2nd house, okay? Then you might trigger the 8th house, okay? And again, it's another karmatic house because it's a water house. But that's 8th house. Scorpionic things. 9th house. 9th house is the house of higher learning. It's a Sagittarian house. Higher learning, spirituality in the sense of, in religion, spirituality, religion, also long distance travel, foreign languages. If you have planets that sit in this house, you might have wanderlust, okay? You want to see the world, and depending on what's there, let's say you have Venus there, you might be hot for teacher, which again, like you see teachers from that house, you might have a guru if you have heavy activity in the 9th house. 10th house is your house of career and like public appearance. And basically it's also the house of how you come off to strangers. Like where your ascendant is how you come off to your friends and family. Your MC or your 10th house is how you're going to come off to complete strangers, right? So it's your public perception of you. So MC, and we talked about IC was the mother, MC is the father, right? So you can see how your father may have been from this chart, this part of the chart. 10th house represents government structures. When you think 10th house, you think which is, Capricorn, Saturn things, right? So you think structure, you think bones, the bones of things, right? So that would be government, law, order, all of these different structures that we have in our life, institutions, prisons, all that stuff, right? Which institutions are also 12th house, but I'll talk about that when we get to 12th house. But basically you can see aspects of the career here. You can see, okay, what might be the flavor of your career or how you would act in your career from the 10th house. 11th house is the house of gains. It's innovation. It's the humanitarian Aquarian house, forward movement, anything that's futuristic science. You can see from this chart, this part of the chart, So anything that has to do with the collective. You have planets in the 11th house. You may be very much a humanitarian, or you might be into philanthropy, or basically anything with the collective where you have to move the collective forward in some kind of way. 12th house is the house of hidden things, okay? It's also the house of undoing. It's fantasies, illusions, bed pleasures, and this is a very, very, very karmatic house, okay? This is a Piscean house. They have, it's very spiritual, okay? Because they have one foot in this realm and one foot in another realm. When you have planets, I tell everyone this, when you have planets in the 12th house, you need a chance to be alone once a day, okay? Because you are a sponge, okay? And depending on what planet that is, it depends on how that will resonate. For example, I have my moon in the 12th house. I pick up everyone's emotions like nobody's business. I could walk into a room full of people and I could be in the best of mood and the room is stank and I feel it immediately, okay? It depends on, again, whatever planets are there and how that will resonate. You need to find something to do once a day to rejuvenate and heal yourself. Whether that's meditation, salt baths, or journaling, you need something once a day to re-center yourself, or else you're going to just keep feeling all day long and nonstop, and it'll resonate in your dreams too. Also, whenever you have planets in the 12th house, especially, let's say, sexual planets, right? Whenever you, and everyone knows this, sex is a spiritual thing as well as physical, but especially for 12th house planet people, if let's say your Mars is there or your Pluto is there, okay, you are going to keep that person on you. You can take on that person's demons if you're not careful, okay? So be very careful who you engage with, because you may be feeling some way, and the thing is, you're so intuitive that you know it's not your energy, and you may be feeling that person from 5 years ago, and they're going through some stuff, and you've taken on their demons, so you're feeling that. If you don't believe in that, whatever, but I believe that that you can still feel people. They're called energetic cords, okay? But you are more prone to energetic cords with planets in the 12th house, okay? So that is it. I rambled a lot. I really should script this stuff instead of doing it from my brain. But that's the houses. Just wanted to do real quick house video, and I'll be back with the sun, okay? And we're going to talk about all the other planets. But next video is sun through the houses. Bye-bye.